to bring things down to sort of the summation to some extent, strong rally, but we're treating it as a bear market rally until we see otherwise. That means, you know, you've got to take profits when they're offered to you. We do think the March bottom may hold. That may have been the bottom, but we do think it's going to go back to that neighborhood a couple of times, we think. Developing country demand, it's the main thing when it comes to metals. It has been for a long time. I had a chart 3/4 built that ended up on a hard drive that got wiped out a couple of days ago. I would have put up a regional copper demand chart because it would have explained to you why our opinion is different from a lot of other people's. Because you all remember how big the housing boom was, right? Gigantic. How big were the house builders? How many places were they throwing up every year in the U.S.? How much impact do you think that had on worldwide copper demand, say 2002 to 2007? Anybody want to guess? How much of the world copper supply that got sucked in by that housing boom? None. The U.S. accounted for none of the increase in copper demand in the last 10 years. None. Now, this is usually what people chase for these things, so I'll cut to the chase because I know you don't really care about the rest of it. You just want some stock symbols. I figure I better end with those. Cheap precious metal producers, all of this stuff, buy on weakness, like we say it all the time in the newsletter, and we mean it. I mean, you know, this ain't a bull market yet, so you got to pick your spots on all of this stuff. Minera Andes and mine finders we both like. Minera hasn't, you know, the market hasn't liked Minera as much as we like it because it's had its travails, but we think it's through most of them in production. Great mine in Argentina, very high grade. They've just increased it to 1,500 tons a day. I think this quarter, next quarter is when you'll actually start seeing them finally start pumping some profits out. It's got room to get a lot bigger. They've got a copper asset that's actually very valuable that the market doesn't give any value to. Xstrata has to decide whether they're going to back in on that in the next 3 or 4 months. If they do back in on it, they've got to write Minera a check for $30 million and take it to production. I think it's sort of 50-50. I think Xstrata actually wants the project, but they've got their own issues to deal with, so I don't know whether they're going to pull the trigger or not. But it's not really part of the valuation yet. Mine Finders, company we followed forever, from $1 to 20 bucks. It's back to about 9 bucks. They went in production late last year. Like most heap leach operations, if you're looking at mining companies and you're looking at companies that start heap leaches, especially larger ones, it's important to remember that they won't actually get up to production rate for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 months. That's basically how long the cycle takes on a heap leach operation. So if you're following a company that's a heap leach producer and their first quarter of production looks small, don't let it freak you out without going through the MD&A, because it actually takes a while to ramp these things up. That's sort of where Mine Finders is now. We know management very well. We're very comfortable with the operation. It should be a good low-cost producer. It still isn't priced at the success we think it's going to have. It's 8 or 9 bucks. It could double from there. Copper producer, yes, we're not actually afraid of copper. We're not afraid of base metals, but selectively. It's too early for explorers. Capstone is a company that got formed from a company we followed for 3 or 4 years. They merged with them and it ended up being Capstone. They've got a mine in the Yukon. They've got a mine in Mexico. Overall, they probably produce at about $1.05, $1.10 a pound copper. They're going to have a big chunk of silver wheaten because the silver wheaten is actually taking over a silver spin-out that Capstone did. So in about 3 or 4 weeks, Capstone will own about $50 million worth of silver wheaten stock. Right now, their cash and their debt are about equivalent, so they basically have no debt. They've got about $50 million cash now. They're closing a $50 million placement, which tells me they're probably shopping. I think they're probably looking at acquisitions. We haven't made any formal guesses. We've got our suspicions about who they're going to shop for, but we're going to try to wring out an end before we talk to some charters about it. Near-term producers, Nevsun, very interesting project, this one. Nevsun's been through the wars. I mean, they made this great discovery in Eritrea. The government, I don't think, was ever actually trying to give them a hard time, but being a nice new revolutionary government, they sent them a letter and said, gee, we'd really like to renegotiate this mining contract. And of course, being a public company, I mean, you get a letter like that, you got to put out a news release. You don't really have a choice. Of course, the stock got killed. Went from like $8 to $1. And it's taken them a couple of years to get through that. They're in development phase now. They actually have a very good deal with the Eritrean government. And the way it works is Eritrea's got 10% carry. That's pretty much standard in Africa. Almost all the African countries have that. They've got another 20% that they're actually going to be, another 30% that's actually going to be bought. They're putting in their portion of the development cost right now, Eritrea is. On the first gold pour, that should be the middle of next year, Eritrea will get a third party, and I think if SRK Engineering is going to do it, a third party valuation. They will use that value to buy that 30% from Nevsun. Why this is interesting is two things. One is that this project, it's a very high grade project. It goes from being from a gold producer in the first 2.5 years, to being a copper producer for 3 years, to being a zinc producer. I won't bore you with the geology, but it's just based on the way this deposit works. All three of those are high grade. Basically, if you're someone that thinks the world's not coming to an end, but that it's going to take some time to pull out of this, this is a very nice way to play it, because it's a gold producer, then a copper producer, then a zinc producer. All of them high grade. When they do their first gold pour, based on the numbers we're looking at current prices, Eritrea would be writing them a check roughly equivalent to their market cap right now. I mean, they basically would have very little debt against this project, and it's a very high, the metrics on it look very, very strong. I mean, it's a very interesting project. The only thing you need to worry about with Nevsun is they still have to have the banks finalize their last financing tranche. So if you're paranoid, and who isn't, you might want to wait to see the formal announcement that yes, all the banks have lined up. They've got most of it already, but they should have it tied up in a bow in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And if you're nervous about the credit markets, and everybody is, you might want to wait to see that announcement like, yes, it's a done deal, we've got all the money. It's already under construction. Strong Explorer, I just threw one in there because I wanted to get another commodity in there. I think our friend, the mercenary geologist, mentioned this one yesterday. Hathor, we've been in longer than anybody. Guys that put the company together, one of them is a very good friend of ours. Great projects. They've done a great job of this thing. It's had a lousy market the last month. There's been a couple of houses that have shorted it. But I'm very comfortable with what they've got. I think they're probably up to 30 million pounds already. It's open in all directions. It's a great project. Again, it's because it's had guys jumping on it. It's one where you want to get it on weakness, throw bids under it, but I don't think you're going to get hurt buying it at these prices. It's around $2 right now. I don't have a lot of trouble seeing $4 or $5